In this video, I'm going to cover what you need to know about William James and functionalism. Then we'll look at why Mary Whiton Calkins was treated so terribly by Harvard University and how she overcame it all. Okay, so the functionalist school of thought was started in psychology by a man named William James. Functionalism itself was a reaction against the ideas of structuralism. And if you remember from the last video, structuralism was focused on breaking down our psychological experience into different parts and then looking at the relationship between those parts. Whereas functionalism was, unsurprisingly, interested in the function of consciousness. One other key difference between these perspectives is that while structuralism relied on introspection as a way to do research, functionalism moved away from that and focused on observing behaviors as its way of doing research. Okay, now let's talk about the function of our psyche. Well, we all have these emotions, right? But what do they do for us? Can you think of a situation where getting angry could benefit you? Or is there any value in feeling afraid? Yeah, absolutely. These emotions can help keep us alive. Aggression can help us win a fight, and fear can help us avoid fights that we might lose. So functionalists would say that the human psyche is kind of hardwired for survival. And if this is starting to sound like a biology class, that's because the functionalists were heavily influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution. William James even argued that consciousness wouldn't even exist unless it provided some benefit in terms of survival. And by now I'm sure you're wondering who this William James guy is. Well, he was a Harvard professor and a significant figure in philosophy as well as psychology. His most important contribution to psychology was the publication of the first Psych textbook, and it was called Principles of Psychology. In the book, he helps establish functionalism as a major theoretical perspective. And while the book was published in 1890, you can actually buy it on Amazon for about $25. But just so you know what you're getting into, the book is 2 volumes and it totals 1,200 pages. Also, beyond being a prolific writer, James was a pretty progressive thinker for his time. He would have been about 20 years old when the American Civil War kicked off, but he decided not to fight on moral grounds, although his younger brothers did fight for the Union Army. Then later in his life, he was an outspoken critic of the American colonization of the Philippines. James was also progressive in that he had no problem with women being educated, which brings us to our next significant figure, Mary Whiton Calkins. Calkins was an academic teaching Greek language at Wellesley College when psychology started gaining popularity in America. She took an interest in the subject and received special permission to attend seminars at Harvard. At the time, Harvard was exclusively male, hence the need for permission. One of these seminars was taught in 1890, right after James published his massive book on psychology. James was happy to have her attend, but the other students refused to learn alongside a woman. So in the end, the seminar became like a one-on-one class between James and Calkins. After that, Calkins went on to complete all the requirements to get a PhD at Harvard. And James, as well as 5 other professors, recommended she should receive the PhD, but Harvard refused to give her a PhD because she was a woman. Later, Harvard tried to offer her a PhD from an associated school called Radcliffe College, but Calkins turned it down. None of this stopped her from becoming a well-respected academic, and she eventually became the first female president of the American Psychological Association. Okay, so there you have it. We've covered the key differences between structuralism and functionalism, and you got the details on 2 more significant figures in psychology. In our next video, we're going to cover the psychoanalytic perspective and the behaviorist perspective.